everybody? Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's another dad chat with myself and Nate. Nate is currently on the upswing of feeling bad sickness wise, but I'm sure it's all going to come back around. It seems like every week it's either you, Cynthia, or the baby, or all three of you at the same time, just like passing the same thing back and forth.
I wouldn't go that far, but
so you're really experiencing some fatherhood here, I think.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? I have found that whenever you feel as though you've got a pretty neatly organized schedule and the baby is involved, that is when the baby is going to throw a screwball at you. And in my case, I dealt with the fact that my daughter, we believe that someone or some people at the nursery have brought their kids in even though the kids had norovirus. And what I can say for certain is that the experience of what we've had in the past couple of days does parallel my experience with norovirus, which, I mean, Cynthia got it right before she realized she was pregnant with our daughter. She was in Geneva for a work thing and got it and had to suffer through like work team building exercises to include going fucking axe throwing while unable to eat or drink anything because she had norovirus. And then she came back, she was feeling better, but she had been sort of in the clear of it for a few days. And I got it. And the best way I could describe that was I was having fun on a Saturday night. I was like, you know what? I normally limit myself to one alcoholic drink. Now I basically don't drink at all. But back then, I did. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have two because I feel good. And it's almost Christmas and whatever. We're having a nice time. And then at about 1 or 2 in the morning, I suddenly felt gastric distress, which turned into, wow, I feel like I drank an entire pitcher of hard liquor, which turned into throwing up in the bathroom, or rather in the garbage can, which turned into basically being paralyzed on the couch for a day and being like concentrated shot of hell. Now, this is basically what happened to me on Friday night of this past week again, except at about 4:15 p.m. at the studio, I was in the middle of soldering a circuit, building a volume box, like a resistor with a potentiometer so people can control their own volume. And it's wired then to a 3.5 mil headphone jack. And the idea is the box mounts under the table, and then people can plug in their headphones, get the connection, and then you set it to like a safety maximum, and they can lower the volume if they want to for their own preference. It's better than what we have now. So I was in the middle of that, and suddenly I felt really like I'd eaten lunch, but I felt like this happens to me sometimes with the ADHD meds, like, oh, you forgot to eat enough, and you're suddenly really hungry. And I'm like, you get so hungry, you feel like I'm going to throw up because I'm so hungry kind of feeling, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I need to eat something. Maybe that's the problem. So I was like, I don't feel well enough literally to go across the street to the Sainsbury's and get something. So just order something delivery. So I did. And I got about 25% of that completed and then suddenly felt way worse. And then I started throwing up. And then I started having diarrhea. And then I started throwing up again. And then I texted Cynthia and I was like, I don't know what's going on, but this feels like I've got norovirus. And she's like, I don't think I have it. So I think I'm clear. Maybe you should just stay there for now because I can take care of the baby who was still kind of unwell.
Yeah, don't bring your nasty ass home.
But don't bring it home.
Yeah.
But then the problem is the baby got worse and Cynthia got thrown up on in the face and then she got it at about 3 a.m. the next morning.
Yeah.
So I spent the night on the studio couch just basically dying, but I used the delivery app to order groceries and got like a loaf of white bread and some what I thought was applesauce and some banana baby food and some rice pudding and like Sprite and the British equivalent of Gatorade. So, I'm an old hand at this. Anyway, 2 things. Number 1, Brits don't eat applesauce the way we do. I realized our concept of applesauce is a German thing because America is secretly German.
Sure.
It's Apfelmus, the German stuff.
Lots of Germans around me, yeah. So wait, what is...
Theirs is like a condiment that you would use with like a pork roast or something. It's like really salty and really sweet. Like I got what I thought was applesauce called Bramley applesauce, and I was expecting it to be like the thing you get in America.
Right, you get a spoon, you dig in.
And the thing you get in Germany, the thing you get in Switzerland. But no, it was more chunky, and it was like, imagine if you took a chunky applesauce and put like jam level sweet and also like 2 packets of table salt into the jar.
What?
It was super salty. And I was like, okay, this isn't bad, but I probably shouldn't be eating this with a spoon. I think this is meant to be a condiment. And I was like, and I'm not going to be able to eat much of this because this is clearly not the right thing.
Right.
So I don't know what the Brits do for their equivalent of the brat diet, you know, bananas, rice, applesauce, toast, but it's clearly not applesauce.
No. I am curious. I was thinking this because I've been rushing around with work and everything, and we have like our pantry and our refrigerator is like at least 25% grab and go snacks of some kind at this point. So you know, you mentioning the applesauce, which is always when our daughter was younger, that was always a go-to for us because it's here, we can put a fruit into you and we can say we're good parents because you've had a fruit today.
Yes, exactly.
You know, every the argument that every parent has to deal with is the how do I justify this? Because any child will live off of chicken tenders and mac and cheese and a glass of milk for their entire life if you let them, and it will work. I mean, certainly it's better than whatever Victorian wasting disease that you would get in the 1800s eating gruel and pond water or something. But I'm curious, like the packaged foods that they have in England and in Geneva, because that's where you're going to be going. Because for lunch, I had a Uncrustable. I don't know if you know what Uncrustables are.
I know what Uncrustables are. Right. Yeah, I do.
So our Uncrustables, and for those of you not familiar, an Uncrustable is like a frozen peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's circular. There's no crust on it. It's just like they put peanut butter and jelly and a big flat thing of bread and then just stamp out these circles and then put them into packages and then you freeze them. And so when you're ready to eat one, you bring it out, you thaw it, and then you eat it. And it's great because I found the perfect way to eat them is that when the bread gets soft, but the peanut butter and jelly on the inside are still a little bit frozen to give it a little bit of a crunch to it. So, and I eat these all the time because I don't have time to make, you know, during the day, sometimes I don't have time to make food. I've got my regular job, and then right now we're recording, and then after this, I got to jump into a meeting. So I'm curious, like, what are the quick, like, food for kids? Like, is it, when you get to Geneva, is it just a bunch of kids named Klaus asking for stroopwafels, or
They speak French, and first of all, stroopwafel is Dutch, and they speak French in Geneva, so it's basically imagine French stereotypes, but also weirdly somewhat out of date with modern France and some random very German things thrown in terms of like national food things. But culturally, it's just basically just like France. It's so much closer to France than the German-speaking part of Switzerland is to Germany for a couple of reasons.
So is it baguettes and cheese then for your 5-year-old?
Yeah. That's pretty common. I mean, so one of my friends there is a dual French and Swiss citizen, and he says that the baked goods game and the bakery game in Switzerland is surprisingly not as good. He said that France definitely outdoes them on it, but certainly you see like, baguettes and, you know, bakeries on the street, and also like grocery stores selling fresh, long, skinny bread kind of thing.
Yeah.
For kids, I think a lot of it's the same. I mean, you know, I did a study abroad in France, and I stayed with a family that had a kid in like 6th grade, and some of the stuff that he wasn't quite like eating like Uncrustables level, but you know what I mean? Like kid food things would be, a lot of it was the same. You know, you'd have things like packaged like frozen vegetables to make for parents to make for dinner, and like chicken nuggets, but then also you'd have things like what they say called compote, like is the fancy word in English for like a fruit mash. It's just literally like mashed something, or mashed potatoes, or like fruit puree, applesauce, that kind of a thing. I would say what I've noticed here is in America, we have a lot of the kind of individual serving cups of things, and, you know, kids eat with a spoon.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here it's more common to see stuff, and maybe this is changing in America too. You'll see stuff that's more like, I mean, that does exist, don't get me wrong. It's not like that's alien, but you also see the like squeeze pouches. So kid can squeeze them into their mouth. You can squeeze it onto a spoon for a baby, which is what we do to feed our daughter with stuff like, you know, fruit puree or fruit and yogurt puree and stuff like that. I would say Uncrustables, I'm like, you can only eat this if you have a sunburn. You like, only sunburnable people are allowed to consume Uncrustables. Nobody else is. But I would say that I don't necessarily know if kind of grab and go stuff for kids. I mean, I definitely think I see the pouch things. I should ask Cynthia at some point, because she's in so many like UK parenting groups online. She's not a poster at all. She's like an information gatherer. She's always doing open source intel.
Mm-hmm.
And she has lots of useful information about this stuff. I don't really know. I mean, I would definitely say that compared to continental Europe, I think I don't necessarily know if it's all that common to find like dinosaur shaped chicken nuggets in France or Germany. Even now, you definitely can find that here. Britain is interesting in the sense that in some ways it has these like bizarre idiosyncratic things that have nothing in common with America or continental Europe. And in other ways, it's just kind of like stepping stone of Americanness into continental Europe in a way. Like they are both more like America than anywhere else, and also in the ways that they're different than America, they're, to my eyes, more different than like your like deepest Euro vibes country is different.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. It's the uncanny valley effect that I've said before, that Britain and America have common origin and are so similar in so many ways that when they do diverge, it's like when a robot has a really fucked up face and it just makes you uncomfortable.
Right.
It's the best way I could describe it.
Right. England is to America, like England is American uncanny valley, and I imagine vice versa as well.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying England there, not because I'm defending Francis. Francis is aware that England and Britain are not synonyms, but rather that like the dominant culture and the weirdest incarnation of this is English culture.
Yes.
Because Scottish, Welsh, Northern Irish culture, like
they all got their own weird shit, but like the English.
Yeah, and they have their manifestations in American culture too in certain ways, but like I think British is just sort of, it's the citizenship and it's the catch-all term of sort of like, we've made English nationalism into a thing that you're supposed to be proud of. Like we've universalized English nationalism, some conditions apply. And it's weird. Like it's English culture is the root of a lot of our stereotypes. Most of them are out of date or kind of weird to begin with. But WASP shit, like American waspiness, that's 100% like it's like the my granddad's from Italy kind of Italian American kind of like over exaggerated thing.
Mm-hmm.
But for being English. Like WASP behavior in America is like 19th century British upper middle class, like striver and upper class manners interpreted through like the lens of people being insecure about sort of colonial origins and the fact that America wasn't like a world power and considered like of the same degree as Europe in the 19th century. Like that kind of cultural cringe complex. Australians know this really well, but Americans had it before wars destroyed Europe twice and we never got destroyed, like flat out.
Yeah, it's what if a Edwardian man owned 10 guns, and that's your average American WASP.
Yeah, but also like the weird non-confrontational stuff, like in the sense of like it's rude to be confrontational, but like everyone's super passive aggressive. Like that's kind of an over exaggerated thing, or like the being kind of emotionally closed off. Like I wouldn't necessarily say the Brits are, it's just that they're closed off about certain topics that we aren't necessarily closed off about. But there's also things that they're really open about that shock me, and I'm not exactly a waspy American.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I guess culturally, what kind of goes in England doesn't necessarily go in America, but
the biggest one is they just will flat out be like, I fucking love drugs. God, I love being on drugs. Like a 65-year-old lady be like, oh yeah, it was so much fun. I got the best ecstasy when I was in Ibiza in the 80s and stuff. And like in America, there's different contexts for people where they're willing to talk about it. And it's not like we don't love, I mean, I'm not a drug user, but it's not like we don't love drugs in America. But it's just that
we just don't talk about it that much.
Legacy of the drug war and the weird Puritanism and narc culture in general, like narc in the literal sense and narc in the figurative sense, we just don't talk about it. They won't fucking shut up about it. They love talking about drugs. And that's, I think, where it's the most disconcerting is conversations where like culturally, like socially, these equivalent people in America would not speak to a stranger or a newly met person this openly about drugs, just do here. And that's
yeah,
a weird one.
When I was younger and my wife and I were first dating, I had an eccentric uncle that lived in Hawaii, and he sent me a couple of joints in the mail along with some Kona coffee. It was great. So he sent me Hawaiian weed, and me and my roommate at the time were just like, all right, well, we want to smoke this joint, but we don't want to. We didn't want to go outside because we're like, well, what if somebody calls the cops on us? And my wife is just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares. And like this was, I'm gonna say like 12 years ago, maybe that 12, probably 13 or 14 years, somewhere along that. So marijuana hadn't been legalized or anything. But my roommate at the time, he and I were from an area of St. Louis. We're from North County. where you had to worry about the fucking cops all the time because, you know, as I've mentioned before, St. Louis County is full of like little cop fiefdoms where some of the cities are only like 10 square blocks, but they have like 20 cops and the entire financial...
Everything in their budget is a speed trap.
Yeah,
basically.
Everything's a speed trap, and they spend their speed trap money on buying Dodge Chargers and putting lights on them. So we absolutely had to worry about that once upon a time. So we're smoking weed in the house, which is just stupid. And then we turned the vent fan on. It was like, oh, well, we'll make it not stink by hitting the vent fan and venting it all outside. And she's just like, you're just doing the exact same thing if you were outside smoking weed. Like, nobody gives a shit. Go outside. And it was such
and besides, get a big long paper towel tube, stuff it full of dryer towels, and blow into that thing. Another thing that doesn't exist here, because dryers are a relatively new thing for people to have at home, like in the last, let's say, generation. Like, it's not that they don't exist, but they're condensation dryers, and I just don't see dryer towels sold here. Like, they're just not a thing that are sold. And so the concept for long-suffering British listeners and European listeners, the American high schooler / college student trick to not get caught smoking weed is obviously this doesn't take away from the smell from the actual burning in the pipe or whatever, or in the joint, but you take a hit and you blow it into these, they're basically like what would you describe them as? They're kind of like a cellulose cloth sort of thing that's got like a really like it's basically anti-static and also like a fresh smell. Freshens
it up a little bit.
And they smell really strongly. Like, the idea is that they emit this as you're putting them in the hot, like a dryer over however long a dryer cycle runs. And so you buy like a box of like 100 of them or 50 of them at the grocery store or whatever. So you pack a tube as tight as they'll go with this thing, and you blow, and you kind of blow all the air from the weed through this tube, and then it comes out the back end basically smelling like dryer towel and not like weed.
Right, which does not work at all. And also a little. Yeah, the problem is all the other like weed that you're smelling, like the joint that you have,
the burning itself.
Right, there's always going to be smell, and it's a very, very strong and obvious. You know, I think
most people on this podcast who are listening have probably smelled weed before. They know that part.
You probably know that.
I mean, you never know. But yeah, I mean, the American college student trick was.
Did you ever blow through
I never did it in my dorm room, but yeah, I blew. Yeah, like house parties and stuff in people's basements and stuff. I mean, I don't know. In retrospect, like, I smoked weed in my front driveway once as a high schooler. Like, we smoked in cars where we were like obviously hotboxing, like that kind of thing. The dumb shit we did. I'm amazed we did, considering how overfunded the cops were in the town I grew up in. I'm amazed we didn't get caught. But luck of being white kids in a white flight suburb of Indianapolis, I guess.
The cops got other things to worry about. Like, that person over there that person looks like they don't get sunburned and they're eating Uncrustable. I got to arrest them.
Yeah, exactly. And they're eating Uncrustable. That's against the law. Like, all of Carmel PD has to pull them over.
Yeah, I think that we could have a good like drug cultural exchange if we could bring like high schoolers from England to America and just like disperse them amongst high school.
No, because they'd all die because they don't understand the concept that like stuff's cut with fentanyl in America.
No,
and you'll die from it.
We're not gonna like. I'm not telling you to.
Bro, they do hard drugs here. Like, I'm not gonna say that kids in high school are doing coke, but like kids in high school, they drink a lot harder than American high schoolers do, in my experience, because alcohol is it's just more ubiquitous and it's a lower drinking age. It's easier to buy what we'd call underage, and then stuff like you don't see stuff like fentanyl. You don't see heroin as much. You don't see pills because like the opioid crisis didn't happen here. You don't really see spice and K2 as much as you do in America, or at least you did when I left. But you do see stuff like ketamine, nitrous oxide, coke's really ubiquitous, ecstasy's really ubiquitous.
You guys love nitrous. What is up with that? Like,
I don't. I mean, I don't.
Well, you got. I know.
Here's the
English.
What's funny is that they've banned the small containers, or it's made it harder to get, and so. Instead, shops that were selling it and kind of like wink nudge selling it for drug users are now just like they can buy the big canisters of it. And so they just like sell the inflated balloons of nitrous that you huff to get high with. Like, back in the day, you had to work fast food and fucking huff the tail end of a whipped cream can.
Yeah.
Like, dude, by the way, whipped cream, do you know what they call whipped cream in at least in British grocery store ad copy when you see it marked on the can?
Whipping cream?
Squirty cream.
It's don't like that at all.
It's just uncomfortable, isn't it? Yeah.
Even the stuff that comes, because like we can get Cool Whip in a container,
here.
But so you can't get whipped cream in a container. It's only squirty.
No, you can, but so there's squirty cream is like the aerosolized stuff that you get in a can. which it's very uncomfortable to say. And then you have like whipping cream is the stuff that would be like you whip it with a whisk or stuff. You have like double cream and things like that. Like there's all these different dairy things. It's just we have them in America like in culinary use, but they just aren't things you'd find in like your equivalent of, I don't know, like Kroger.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But also you can't buy vapes in Kroger, and you absolutely can. Like they sell like 40 different types of disposable vapes in like my neighborhood equivalent of Kroger here. So
yeah, I haven't hit the vape shop that's around us. We have so many like little tiny. I have a nice bodega though. I'm excited to have a St. Louis bodega, which I don't know if it really. What is. You're a New Yorker. What is a bodega? Like, what's the definition? Does it have to be
a corner store? It's just a corner store. It's just that the reason why they got called bodegas there is just because, if I understand it correctly, the word was a Puerto Rican word, and obviously one of the big waves of immigration in New York City in the 20th century were Puerto Ricans coming to live there, and so you basically have a lot of kind of cultural stuff in like nowadays. It's funny because everyone calls it a bodega. Like you can. It's kind of hard to call it anything else. I mean, like people know corner shop, that kind of thing. But like, I think I told you this, that I had a student once when I taught college English who was writing a paper about the Trayvon Martin story. And she called it where he went to 7-Eleven at a gas station in like the suburb of Miami he was living in and bought, what is it, like a Gatorade and Skittles. And she said he, walked into a bodega, and I was like, you know what? That's not really a word people use outside of New York City. Like, we wouldn't call it that outside of here. You'd call it a convenience store.
Yeah, or just a
like
7-Eleven.
A village pantry. Yeah, 7-Eleven, that kind of thing. So she came back in the next draft and she wrote convenient store. And I'm not making fun of her. She was a great student. It's just that she had never heard that term before because just bodega was ubiquitous. Yeah. But no, what's also funny now is so many of the people who run bodegas are Yemeni.
Where you're at?
So it's like
just in New York City?
No, in New York City. Yeah, there's lots of Yemeni immigrants, and so the bodega as a concept is like the word is Puerto Rican. And there are a lot of Dominicans and Puerto Ricans that run bodegas still, but also there's a ton of Yemeni ones. And it's funny because the Yemenis, because like when there's a storm, they whip out the generators. They're like, I don't care if power goes out. We got you. We are going to have, bun burner fucking coffee at 3 a.m. That's like 48 hours old. Actually, no, it's fresher than that. We're going to have just a grocery store gallon of milk in a tiny fridge. And that's what you get the milk in your coffee from. If you buy American Spirits or whatever, they're going to have Virginia tax stamps on them. We're going to pick them up from a hatch under the floor to sell them. Like
down here with all the menthol cigarettes and the Juuls that have the flavor in them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I bought a disposable vape when I was in New York City in 2022, and the guy was like, yeah, I open up this box of like stationery in the back that looks like a letter box or something. He's like, it's back there by like the, flat mailers, and I opened it up and it's full of like vapes from California because they had banned flavored vapes in New York City.
No,
they haven't done that. They're going to do it in Britain eventually because the Labour Party current incarnation are all like huge authoritarians. But it's just one of those things where they haven't gotten around to it yet, so it's still kind of a free for all. Whereas America, I don't know, the Juul kind of moral panic, which I mean, they absolutely marketed those to kids.
Oh, 100%.
What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I mean. Look, I get it with the cigarettes, and Joe Camel was a cool camel cartoon that we all wanted to emulate or whatever. But
I mean, what if a guy with a face that was a huge dick was like a badass and owned like a cool stereo and was just like doing cool guy things? It would make me want to smoke too.
He's always wearing a leather jacket. He's on a motorcycle, and he's always smoking a cigarette and looking very cool.
Looking really cool, looking shredded.
When I was 14, I wanted to be Joe Camel.
It had an appeal. It genuinely had an appeal. Like, I don't know why, but yeah, basically Joe Camel was like the precursor to any sort of American anime. Before we had King of the Hill, we had Joe Camel.
Yeah, Joe Camel and Spuds McKenzie. Also, they were like Turkish tobacco, so it made you feel like international.
Spuds McKenzie doesn't ring a bell, so you gotta enlighten me.
Spuds McKenzie, I think, was Bud Light. He was like a little. He was like a terrier dog of some kind.
Because I was thinking of the Budweiser Frogs was one too. That was that.
Do you remember the Futurama episode, the Slurms McKenzie one, where they've got the Slurm slug?
No, I did watch some Futurama, and I did like it, but I'm not like a comprehensive knower of all of the lore.
Gotcha. Well, for those of you who are also struggling with Spuds McKenzie, that's where that came from. But you can look him up. He was just I think it was like the 80s or so, and then they got rid of. I think the dog died, and they're like, well, that's enough. I mean, of that.
I'll be honest with you. Look, I watched the Juul documentary on Netflix. I think it makes a pretty compelling case that like whether or not it was knowing on their part they fully went into it like, let's make these things cool to young people. And that turned into a thing with high schoolers vaping.
Yeah.
Now, the Juul killing you thing, the vape killing you thing, like, as I understand it, these were kids who were using counterfeit stuff, and they were typically weed vapes, not Juul cartridges.
Mm-hmm.
But I will also say this. I was nicotine free for 4 years, and I started using Juuls because Milo briefly dated someone who was a Juul brand rep in Europe.
Yeah, cigarette Camel Girls like they had in the bars.
Free Juuls we had in the studio. And I then, when COVID hit, I kept it in the studio and I wouldn't bring it home. And then, like, during the periods of, call it, exceptional stress in the early days, I just started vaping at home. I had to go to the studio to grab all the stuff I needed to take home because we didn't know if we'd have access to it. And I started vaping at home, and then it became like, I guess I'm a vapor now. And I've never really quit. So on one hand, I was an ex-smoker. On the other hand, I will say this. I have no urge to smoke cigarettes anymore.
No, I don't.
I would periodically feel like falling off the wagon with cigarettes, or like in a period of extreme stress, buy like a pack and smoke one or two. I haven't done that in years. But I also, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I don't vape like horror stories of high school students, like, you know, or those videos you see of TikToks of the person with, like, you know, 2,000 empty Elf bars in their apartment. But I do vape enough that it's if someday down the line they're like, oh, by the way, it causes fucking ultra cancer, like, I'm probably going to be at risk. If not necessarily someone who's got it, I'll be at risk. I'll put it that way.
And if it went away, there'd be a couple days of having the shakes.
No, not really. Weirdly enough, I think a lot of it is also situational.
I didn't mentioned
vape at all when I was sick recently. I didn't have any desire to. And, like, I have done it since I got back on it, but, like, it's been kind of a reset. I'm not really doing it as much. I had a friend who it took him a long time to quit cigarettes, and he was enough of a hardcore smoker that he had the flu, like full on, like, debilitating shakes, flu, need to be wrapped in a blanket, can't stand up, and still would get up and walk out of his building and smoke a cigarette.
Ugh, no.
Like, never, for cigarettes or vape, I've never been like that.
No. I do, as you said, don't really have the urge to smoke, but there are those kind of situational, like, if I'm walking out of a restaurant after I've eaten, like, especially any of the Mexican restaurants around here, and I've stuffed myself full of rice and burrito, and then I smell somebody smoking a cigarette, there's just a little section of my brain that lights up that's just like, boy, a cigarette would be really great right now. And that's like once every 6 or 8 months that I catch something like that. Yeah. But, and also, there was I can't remember where my wife and I were at. I think maybe it was in Memphis years ago when we walked by a bar that still had smoking, or like maybe was kind of skirting around. But you know that smell of a restaurant bar that people smoke in? It has a very specific kind of grease, alcohol, and tobacco scent. And that just transported me back to being 24 years old in a bar again. And it was one of those, like, my wife and I both kind of grabbed each other. It was like, oh fuck, that smells real good. Neither of us were going to go buy a pack of cigarettes, but it was a like, oh wow, that's lighting up some parts of the brain right there.
It's funny because Cynthia has never smoked ever, and her mom was a chain smoker when she was a kid, and Cynthia had really bad asthma and still does. So honestly, I think we were already dating when I mentioned that I was an ex-smoker. And she said normally she wouldn't have considered dating an ex-smoker because more often than not, ex-smokers fall back on smoking. And it's like horrible for her. Like the effects are really bad.
Sure.
Now, that's one of the reasons why I don't. I mean, I have smoked, I think, maybe 2 or 3 times in it'll be 8 years at the end of this year that we've been married, and 9 years we've been together. But like, I think of the times that I have, only one time I was ever like nearby her afterwards. Like, I think one time I was in Edinburgh for a show and I smoked afterwards. That was about it.
Every once in a while, you got to have one to remind yourself why you don't have them anymore.
Also, people love rolling their own here because it's cheaper than buying pre-rolled. And like, I hate smoking roll your own cigarettes.
I know, God, it just...
Give me that accelerant that gives you cancer. I want that even burn. I want it to be perfectly packed, like fucking God.
Let me tell you, when they added the thing to cigarettes to make them go out if you're not actively smoking them, and it just slightly changed the flavor of it, but everybody got over it very quickly. But yeah, they're like, too many people are falling asleep with cigarettes in their hands and burning their houses down, so we have to add something in that if you haven't taken a drag in a minute, the whole thing just goes out.
The whole thing goes out. Yeah, by the way, we bought it from Monsanto. Don't worry about it.
Look, it's no worse than all the other bullshit that you're inhaling into your lungs. So don't. That's like, oh, people will complain. It's like, well, we don't know what this could do. Like, well, we know what the rest of it does. So
yeah, but we also,
cool
I was gonna say, we know that at the end of the day, like dry organic matter, and you're inhaling it, like even with a fiberglass filter, you're still like, it's not as tightly packed of a filter as that goddamn tube full of dryer towels that is not particularly effective at killing the smell of weed. So you're getting that. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, I bring up the thing about Cynthia not smoking because if she and I went past a place that smelled that way, I think I'm at the point now where the smell of cigarette smoke actually just kind of bothers me. Like, I just don't find it appealing.
Yeah.
And she would be like, stay the hell away. And I don't think that's just a learned response or psychosomatic on my part, because I don't want to, I've learned to hate cigarette smoke because I don't want to ruin my relationship with my wife. I think it's also just, I've been away from it for so long, and none of my friends smoke enough for me to smell it on a regular basis that I just don't really like it anymore. I mean, I have in the last couple of years, but then also Tom and I were hanging out and I smoked, and it was when I was having the lung problem anyway, and it made it so much worse. And I was like, okay, lesson learned. Don't ever fucking do this again. And I haven't. It's been 2 years.
It's always very strange to me to see like young people smoking cigarettes now. Like I expect to see anybody, like if you're smoking cigarettes, you need to be like at least 35 years or older, like anything else, like get a vape. The vape is easier to use. It doesn't stink up everything. Like you can get them in different flavors. And I know, varying depending on what state you're in, but we did a vendor event during 420, and everybody around was using vaporizers. They had the Lost Marys or the Elf bars or whatever, what have you, and I didn't smell a single cigarette, and it was this whole outside kind of thing. And like I said, it's always like, you're 22, go buy a Juul. Why are you smoking look, you shouldn't be inhaling anything into your lungs that isn't air only, regardless. Like vapes, cigarettes, anything like that, it's not good for you. We know that. Something
that I find interesting is obviously here in the UK, it's very easy to get disposable vapes everywhere. Like off the top of my head, if the vape that I currently have, if it ran out, I could walk about 200 feet to a corner shop, emphatically not a bodega, it's a corner shop, British equivalent, and they sell, like, they have a refrigerated food counter, like behind the sort of the glass of where they sell stuff, that's got like curry and sandwiches, but then all of the unused space that would normally go for like sandwich stuff is just vapes, like Elf bars, Lost Marys, Found Mary. I don't know what the fuck the difference is. a bunch of different brands of it, and yeah, it's just vapes everywhere, and then vape cartridges.
Looks like there's a Geek bar now too.
Yeah,
they're all the same.
Crystal's another one, and so actually they're not. I'd say this because I know this from the Crystals taste good. They run out faster than Elf bars, and when I was dealing with a really sore throat, Elf bar did not burn my throat and make me cough. Crystal absolutely did. It was harsher. So lesson learned on that one. There's some slight differences, and they're all made by like Chinese name, manufacturer, conglomerate, etc. The name is different on different packages of the same brand. You have no idea. You know what I mean? Like it's the wild somewhere of the world for vapes, especially in call it the crackpot libertarian paradise of the United Kingdom, sort of the unregulated former EU. Also back on down on the high street where there's a couple of like food shops, like there's a chicken spot, there's a another corner shop. There was like a pharmacy that we go to that down there near the library, one of the bus stops we go to. There's both in the corner shop you can buy vapes, and there's two different, like a stand where a guy's selling like cell phone chargers and vapes. And then there's a fruit stall and he also sells vapes. And that's just on that street. And then on the corner, I'm thinking past the post office, there's a couple other corner shops, they all sell vapes. There are a couple of news agents, they all sell vapes. Down the high street, there's an actual vape shop, but I think it might be closed because why go to the vape shop when you can either buy them online or every single place sells disposable vapes or cartridges and stuff. So in Switzerland, that's not the case. And something that I found interesting there is that cigarettes are way more popular cigarettes are way more popular with young people, and a lot more people vape like the big ass walkie-talkies that do the ultra clouds, which is kind of a throwback to an older era for us. I do see some disposables, but they're far rarer there. And actually, like, I remember trying to find a place that sold disposables. It was in Montreux, which is funny. Montreux is famous for an international jazz festival. It's also where the Montreux Casino burned down, and that's why Deep Purple wrote Smoke on the Water. It's where there's a statue of Freddie Mercury, which is why I went there, because I thought it was really funny to go to the statue of Freddie Mercury. There's where Queen recorded a ton of their albums.
Sure.
And the shop in Montreux was like very small, and they only had like they had a smaller, so like they were a specialty vape shop, and half the stuff was nicotine free, and they had a smaller selection in the specialty vape shop that clearly has to stay in business to stay open in Montreux, a very expensive city in the French speaking part of Switzerland. They had a smaller selection than like that place down the street from me, where like half the refrigerator is curries and sandwiches, and the other half is vapes. So it was interesting. Like, I think cigarettes are still the nicotine supplier of choice, certainly in the German-speaking part of Switzerland, but like in the French-speaking part too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really go into convenience stores or bodegas.
7-Elevens,
7-Elevens,
Village pantries, Village's pantries.
Village's Pantry. Yeah,
Is the Village Pantry still around?
Yeah. Village Pantry still.
It was the thing in Indiana, obviously, like way back.
I don't think there's any in St. Louis, but I have seen them when out and about traveling.
Because they were definitely an Indiana thing. I mean,
we're driving to Kentucky tomorrow or this weekend. I'll keep an eye out for them, since I'll be in your neck of the Midwest.
My neck of the Midwest, yeah. I mean, Village Pantry is where I bought my first legal beer. The guy was like, "What the fuck?" And then I was like, "No, dude, look, it's past midnight. It's now the 28th of September, 2005. I'm 21 years old. I can buy this huge can of Foster's."
Oh, you went with a Foster's?
Why not? This is 19
disgusting.
years ago.
Yeah, fair. Fair enough.
Yeah, who cares?
Not like I was any better buying Bud Select. So,
dude, I was just thinking about it, because it was around the time that I was in college that Village Pantry started doing the thing where you had the sign-in sheet to be able to buy Sudafed, and they banned Yellow Jackets. So they stopped selling Yellow Jackets. So like in one point, I'm like, oh yeah, that thing. In the same, and then I realized, I'm like, yeah. And you started undergrad 21 years ago. You had an intern.
Yeah, it's best not to think too hard.
I had
an
intern, and it was funny because he was born September 29th, 2005. And I was like, normally I can't say this, but I know exactly where I was when you were born. I was nursing a hangover from having gone out on my 21st birthday, because I had just turned 21 the day before. And you, at the time, he was between his junior and senior year of high school equivalent in Britain, and now he's about to get ready to graduate and go to university. And so I'm just like, I'm old, but honestly, I don't fucking care. It's fine. Like, it's genuinely fine. I'd so much rather be who I am now and where we are now versus being 19 now. Ooh. Yeah. At 19 then too? I mean, fuck. Yeah, no.
Yeah, we still, like, I am so glad that I've never had to use a dating app, like it just seems like hell. And sorry, I was looking at the, so Village Pantry has apparently expanded quite a bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The first Village Pantry was in Muncie, Indiana.
Yep.
And then they've kind of turned into the VSP convenience store group after buying Young's, Lil Cricket, and Scotchman, and then reorganizing to consolidate accounting.
Muncie, where Dave Thomas, the guy... No, hang on, let me think about this for a second. Dave Thomas is the guy from Wendy's. I don't think he has an Indiana connection. Help me out, though. Oh, no, it's Jim Davis, the creator of Garfield.
Garfield, yes.
Is from, I believe, Muncie, Indiana.
Yes.
Which is to imply that all of early pre-cartoon by committee Garfield is set in Muncie, Indiana.
Let's see, you guys got a lot of, Jim Davis. There's a lot of people on the Muncie, Indiana Wikipedia.
The weird viral video about Lazy Muncie or whatever.
I don't remember that one.
The 2000s, I think I know it was like, all the Lazy Muncie, Crazy Muncie. It was some video. I don't know if it was from like a TV show or if it was just like an internet video or some kind of like pre-Lonely Island sort of like E-Bombs World viral video song. But yeah, that was one.
Can't imagine making a song about Muncie, Indiana, but
I mean, I can't imagine living in Muncie, Indiana, but I mean, also, I've made it a point to get as far from Indiana as I possibly can.
Yeah, you keep running to different places other than Indiana, which I completely understand, because like I said, we're going to Kentucky. I'm like, I swear, if we have to touch Indiana while we drive there, we're going to have problems.
The thing that's funny about Indiana is that, like, people make this comment about, like, everyone trying to get away from Ohio, and it's true, and Indiana's the same thing, but there's a lot of people from Ohio who are obsessed with how great Ohio is. there's very, very few people, even people who like Indiana, who are going to go to bat that hard. That's my, like, Ohio and Indiana are only different in the sense that Ohioans are suffering from delusions of grandeur of how great Ohio is.
Yeah. I do like that there's always a, all these astronauts came from Ohio, and it's like, yeah, they're trying to fucking leave. They found the furthest place away. It's called the International Space Station.
Get as far as you possibly can from Ohio.
And if I have to, I can scream in on re-entry and detonate the capital city.
Yeah, do like a Tunguska incident over like Xenia, and people be like, oh, I wouldn't notice the difference.
Yeah, just a guy from Ohio getting ready to go up to the International Space Station. They're like, why'd you pack all of these like really long tungsten rods that you're bringing up here? It's like, don't fucking worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
We're just going to open the window and chuck these out.
Yeah, I like the idea that you have like Armstrong windows in the space station. You can just roll down and be like, just in case you need a breeze.
Yeah, gotta let the air out a little bit.
One's marked Dayton, one's marked Toledo, one's marked Steubenville, one's marked Cleveland, one's marked Cincinnati. Not enough. Got to find more cities. Destroy them all.
Yeah, just what we can do is drop them all along the border so that the entire thing just sinks. I'm getting my physics.
Yeah, like the Bugs Bunny Florida separation thing, but for Ohio going into like Lake Erie.
A big saw. No, we just get Lake Ohio. We just get an Ohio-shaped lake.
Oh, a new Great Lake.
Yeah, the Lake of Ohio.
Or you could either expand. Well, you'd either expand Lake Erie, or you just create a new Great Lake. So
they're all connected, so it can be its own lake.
Sure, but I think they're connected by like small waterways that kind of make them into separate bodies of water. That's why you have the separation between, Lake Erie, Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake St. Clair, Lake Superior.
Yeah, and we're
there's the little straits and stuff. So in this case, like, it would just become really deep Lake Erie.
Yeah, we're getting off topic here though, which is the point is sink Ohio into the ocean. Or find an ocean to sink it into, one or the other.
Sink Ohio into the Great Lakes.
Yeah. Actually,
because the ocean's too far.
Like most things in between the Mississippi River and Appalachia can just kind of, we don't need that.
It was interesting when you think about it, though. You said that Village Pantry has expanded. It's like going to try to create a counterforce to challenge the supremacy of Wawa in the sort of borderlands of the Midwest, in the sort of like Western Pennsylvania area.
Well, it's going to
on a long enough timeline.
It's going to come up against Quick Trip if it tries to cross the Mississippi River. So
I feel like I've been to Quick Trip, but didn't make an impression on me. Obviously, I know Wawa. I know Come and Go, spelled KUM and GO.
And Casey's General Store.
Yeah. There's that too. There's Flying J.
Yeah, the Flying J. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think those still exist. I don't think Come and Go exists anymore.
I have seen the signs, obviously, but I can't remember if
there might be derelict signs along Highway 70.
Yeah. That's that too. Like no one is making them take the old signage down.
Right. And nobody should. You know what? Let those let it stand. Much like your squirty cream, we need to have Come and Goes here in America.
The squirty cream thing, it's just one of those things where I think, once again, the uncanny valley, the robot with a fucked up face, certain things that are considered like cutesy or funny or clever or whatever in British English, in England English, if you will, because like I said, it's like a thin ecumenical veneer over English nationalism. It just comes across as weird to us. And I'm sure there's an equivalent, like British listeners, if y'all have experience with American stuff that just weirds you out, yes, okay, Americans talking about their feelings or their life history, fine, that's the stock answer I get. But like, Brits do this too sometimes, so it's like, whatever. I mean like a thing, like an object, a name, ad copy, some kind of term. Okay, fanny pack, I get it, that's one that weirds them out, but like, right, but you got to give me a better one than that. Squirty cream is a niche one. That, and Francis was like, he wasn't like, that's a sex joke. He was like, that's uncomfortable. That's exactly how I felt the first time I saw it.
It's something like, it feels like something a pedophile says, right? Like,
what?
It just sounds like I don't know why. But like, if you're gonna say squirty cream to me, I'm gonna think unkind things about you.
I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but there's just something about it that just seems like. Have you ever heard Mitchell and Webb look?
Yeah.
So did you ever seen the skit about the bawdy 70s hospital?
I think so. That sounds, yeah.
Where everything is like double entendre sex jokes. And then finally one of the David Mitchell's character is just like, oh, should I just take my cock out now? And everyone's like, wait, what? Like they're weirded out by him just being actually sexual because everything is just
right. It's
like euphemism sex jokes, and it's over the top ridiculous, like, oh yes, kind of stuff, like Carry On films. But that kind of a thing, I feel like that's what it comes across to me as. like a kind of like wink nudge thing. I don't necessarily immediately think, child sex crimes thing. I just think more, it's just like, oh yeah, you're so fucking clever. It's a sex joke, whatever.
Oh, right.
And it's probably not intended to be.
No.
It's just that.
It's probably like one of those things that they came up with in like the 50s. And back then, nobody was, they hadn't evolved into squirty cream being sexual. They were just like, no, it's cream that squirts. It's squirty cream. It's fine. We're just telling you what it is. It's cream that squirts. And you can also,
that's the thing, is that,
get you high.
It's the general degradation of society. No, I don't want to go there. I don't want to sound like Jordan Peterson. What I'm trying to say here is more along the lines of, I mean, you do see this sometimes where, like stuff just hasn't really aged. Like there's been a cultural shift or a slang term that's then made something that would have been otherwise benign seem at best uncomfortable and at weird, just like, you're going to have to change the name, sorry.
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking about this recently just because I was curious about stuff for Joe's setup in his studio in the Netherlands. And I was looking at, if I'm going to get, like, depending on the setup, do I want to get a thing where it's like a controllable, good setup of microphone preamps that might be like close to him, that he can control for him and guests and so on, that would then just go into, instead of it being like into a interface that has preamps, would it just be like a line level input thing and he can control it? So I was looking for that. No, I'm not going to do that because they're insanely expensive and it's more than he would need. Like, it's not that he can do fine with what we've got already, and like he doesn't need that. It's going to be more complicated. We don't want to spend £2,000 on a 4-channel fucking preamp system. But one of them, I believe, was a 2-channel one that was selling for like almost £1,900, and it was called the Creamliner. And I'm just like, no. No. That was probably some old ponytail grandpa audio guys came up with that and they didn't make it with the intention of it coming across like bawdy 70s hospital sex joke. But to me, no, I will not be buying the Creamliner. I will certainly not be boarding the Creamliner. That's not how it works.
You got to spread the Creamliner onto it. Me and the lads are going to go down to the pub and do some Charlie and suck on some squirty cream.
Yeah, huff squirty cream because it's cheaper than NOS. Yeah, I made the joke recently that now instead of slipping on all the tiny discarded NOS cartridges, you can trip and fall in an enormous discarded NOS cartridge, because I now see them in the street instead. Just like guys walking around like fucking backpacks for Ghostbusters kit, with these things.
Or you could be like the aged Americans who have to walk around with an oxygen tank that's on like a little pulley system. You just do that for
like
NOS.
emphysema cart, but for getting high. Yeah. And then when you give yourself brain damage for it, you can then also get the walk in the cart, the roller, etc.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and talk about our question for today. I think this is a good one based on what we talked about at the very beginning. Not squirty cream necessarily, but what do you cook day to day for yourself and for your family? And I know you and I are the cooks of our families, right?
We are, yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I take care of breakfast for my daughter, which is usually like toast and a banana, because it's the same thing. Weekends we do pancakes, but nice fibrous toast, banana, milk, and then really the only thing that I cook is usually in the evening, and it just depends. Like, I made a beet coleslaw yesterday because we got beets from our CSA, so got to use them up. Got to figure out how to use these things that we're getting along with it. But I don't know. It's a lot of I just kind of go down and see what we got, and if I just don't feel like doing anything, I just make a bunch of snacks and put them out. And it's just like, here, have some snacks.
It depends for me. I mean, I think right now, my daughter is still on like a mixture of like purees and early solid foods, and then also like bottles of formula. So not really cooking a ton of stuff for her right now, but going to start, introducing as she gets a little older. Some of the things I'd say, like, it's less of day-to-day things. I think during COVID, for example, I used to make scrambled eggs like every day. But now I think one of the things that we've gotten used to that we like a lot is just having Greek yogurt. So we buy that from the store, and I make Greek yogurt, for myself, and Cynthia makes it for herself. Like, we are on a different schedule. We're not like having sit down sort of set breakfast time. But I do the cooking. So when we do cook dinner, when we have meals together, it's going to be like, I think some of the staples that I make, like kind of default things that Cynthia might ask me to make, would be, I have a marinara sauce that's just the New York Times recipe. I've just kind of like amended it a bit. She really likes that. I have a risotto recipe that's from an old cookbook years ago that my uncle had, that's incredibly inauthentic. I'm sure it would make all Italians mad at me, but it's good. I make that. That's like 2 kind of stock ones. My mom had a Caesar salad recipe that I really like, so I make that sometimes. I make it with kale instead of romaine lettuce because I find the romaine lettuce you get here, it's typically like romaine hearts only, and it's just not enough.
Yeah.
And
No,
kale
it's
lasts
not.
longer in the fridge with salad dressing on it than romaine lettuce does. A couple other things I'm trying to think off the top of my head. There's a recipe we love that's a New York Times recipe for like chili noodles, and we add in because it's pretty. This is hard to find in America, but it's not here for various cultural reasons. Ground lamb, or what they call lamb mince, is very easy to find here, and so I found doing this chili oil, like chili oil noodles with cilantro, and you like fry some shallots, like not battered, but you know what I mean, like dredged in flour, and you can put crispy shallots on top. And to add protein into it, what we do is take ground lamb and add soy sauce, sesame oil, white pepper, salt. I chop up a green onion, like mince up a green onion, stir it into there, and stir that up and kind of marinate it, and then cook it with a cumin, with ground cumin, and mince that, or rather brown that in a skillet, and then drain it off and mix it in. So you have the chili oil kind of mixture, which is like the Lee Kum Kee chili, like fried garlic, crispy chili stuff, and chili oil, sesame oil, soy sauce, cilantro. I'm trying to get the words right, English, British versus American. Green onions, and then udon noodles, and you stir all that up and get it super like coated, and it's really good. And then we put in the meat as well, and then like either garlic chives or green onions or both. And often I just do both. And then that makes a ton, and it keeps really well. And it's like a meal on its own. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And so that's like some of the staples. But yeah, it's weird. Like since we've had a kid, and since we've been on sometimes of different schedules where like if one of us is doing night shift and the other one is doing like early morning shift, then it hasn't been like sit down to breakfast time anymore. But I'm hoping that'll change. Like when our daughter gets older and she's sitting, we're having meals together. Like there'll be
you'll get back
moments,
to
and
that.
I'm looking forward to that.
And we definitely because breakfast and lunch are just usually kind of a drive-by affair in our house. Like I don't really eat breakfast. I make my coffee. I will maybe we have various protein bars or something. And then lunch, like I'm recording during my lunch now, so I didn't go in and make them anything. But also I just fucking cook a lot of frozen stuff. Like go to Costco, get this big thing of like frozen taquitos and heat a couple of those up. Don't ever be afraid of frozen dinners, because like frozen dinners have advanced to a point now where they're a lot better. And you don't have to get the thing on the tray or anything, but if you can get like, okay, I've got a pound of ground beef and I know how to season it. I know an egg for binder if you want to do burgers, a little Worcester, a little garlic, a little onion, a little, there's all kinds of, and as soon as you kind of understand those basic flavors, food, it's really easy to just, throw something on and then put it out there. Cause like my kid won't eat anything, but I do know the things that she will eat. And I've made them very easy for myself to make.
I would say also in the UK, once again, long-suffering British listeners, if you're out there, one thing that I think is great here that I don't really recall being as common of a thing in America is that grocery stores, whether it's big ones like a big Sainsbury's or a big Tesco, or like Tesco Metro or a Sainsbury's local, or Morrison's has them, big and little Waitrose has them, Marks and Spencer has them. The pre-made, not frozen meals, where it's just like bake this in the oven. Like marinated, like Asda has really good marinated things like pre-marinated piri chicken and stuff. Those are amazing, and they're not that much more expensive than just the raw meat. And you can get them in like, it's just a thing you heat up the oven or do in the microwave and cook them. Like, I'm not gonna lie, with some of the illness and just stress and issues we've had, like sometimes dinner has been go get some of the cook in the oven / heat up in the microwave chicken tikka masala meals from Sainsbury's local. That are not frozen, but rather like pre-made, chilled. Those are actually incredible. And some of them are really good. And some of them are good enough that I'm like, I want to learn like the recipe this is based on and make like a fancier version when I have time.
I'm a big fan of frozen orange chicken. That all I have to do is make some rice and warm up the chicken and then put the packet of sauce on it. And then, serve. I chop up some whatever vegetables we might have into the rice itself, and then serve that. it's got the presence of a full like thought out meal, and it's like, no, I did this in like 10 minutes and I just brought it up from the freezer. It's I was actually, you remember the the Rolling Stones song Mother's Little Helper?
I'm not like super into their back catalog, but
it's about, you know, moms doing popping yellow pills to deal with their shitty husbands and stuff.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, and one of the lines in there is she buys an instant cake and she finds a frozen steak and then goes running to the shelter of Mother's Little Helper. And I just think like, man, nowadays an instant cake and a frozen steak, man, that's all I'm all about. But I don't have any cool yellow pills to make the sadness go away or make my shitty 1950s husband not hit me.
They don't give me Valium or Speed. I mean, they kind of do, but for a different reason.
Yeah.
But I can get an instant vape. You know, I can get a balloon of NOS. I can get a watermelon flavored disposable vape.
We need Rolling Stones, the Rolling Stones, to update Mother's Little Helper to somehow include an Elf bar in there.
The Rolling Stones actually have like a storefront in London to sell like Rolling Stones merch, and it's just one of those things where it's like they're such a global brand now that it's kind of detached from that, but also like 60s London, you practically could find something. It would be closer if you were in like the London of Charles Dickens stories than it is versus now. And it's just interesting to me because it's like, yeah, the Rolling Stones singing about social issues in Britain, and it's just sort of like, my mortgage tripled overnight. I haven't had a pay rise in 15 years. I love these vapes. Career paths available to me, working in a call center, sell cocaine out of a Mercedes. Not really sure what else. Yeah, like drive for Uber, drive for Lyft, get a black cab license, drive for Get. I don't know, man. Like it's, but then again, no one wants to hear it from me because it doesn't matter how well you know this country or whether or not you're speaking accurate information. People hear this accent and the first thing they think of is shut the fuck up, Yank. And also you just got off the plane from Heathrow yesterday. And it's like, no, first of all, I arrived at Gatwick and that was 6 years ago and I put up with your shit. So I do know what I'm talking about. Just because I didn't grow up watching Jim Will Fix It doesn't mean I can't understand like what it's like to live in this country. But you know what? I'm gonna walk away. And I'm gonna move to a sane country that definitely isn't ruled by the far right. That definitely isn't upset. Like definitely won't send you to jail if you put your trash out on the wrong day.
Yeah, nothing to look deeper into in Switzerland whatsoever. Nate, thank you for being here and doing another Dad Chat. We have got a bonus episode that is out for everybody on Patreon. That is the Zoo Crew, and it's Ask the Zoo Crew. So if I'll gathered a bunch of questions from our Discord, and you can listen to myself and Joe and Carrie try to answer your god-awful, terrible questions. We did our best, I promise. But everybody, thank you for listening so much. Nate, thanks for being here, and we'll talk to you next week.
Have a good one.